My name is Bogi Eliasen. I work with the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. I am mainly responsible for health. What we do is to bridge digital health and genomics, and we work on a Danish, Nordic, European and global level with that. My role in the FireJam project was a co-initiator of this era. It was an era where the genomics began. We also saw endeavors in the other Nordic and European countries. My specific approach to this was more on the societal value than on the sequencing itself, and that's what we have pushed forward, and that's what we tried with having this as the first attempt to think what does it mean to make a population genomic project. So the wider implication of that project is that we set the frame on population genomics, how to work with it and put it from research into clinic and more on societal impact and societal use. And I think we have been a part of framing on how that has been articulated further on. So our white paper was a collaboration with the Oulu University complex in Finland. And we saw a need to work with what does this mean, so the convergence part, but also to work in ecosystems. And we already agreed on, from the start of this project, that this is not something that a region or a country does alone, but rather a group of countries. And our thinking in this has been that it's very good to start this in the Nordics, and then it might go as a European project later on. We have technology today that can do much more than we do. So we need to think about not just innovation, we also need to step away from just thinking about producing new data and have a focus on what we actually can do. We have, in the spring of 2019, worked with a large group of Nordic decision makers, where we have worked on different ways of going forward together. So we have identified 5 Nordic core values. We have identified the 5-5 vision on working on the long term with changing the way we work to have half of the focus on primary, secondary and tertiary prevention. And we are also focusing on how the Nordics could be a part of framing this landscape in the future. So in the Nordics we can do a lot of things because the countries are connected and very digitized and there is a trust in the system, but this needs to be a European and a global effort on long term. So the change we need right now is to think about what do we actually want to do with persons. So that's the value outcome, and the value outcome is not necessarily just that you get a good treatment, but you actually have an improved quality of life on long term. And quite shortly, do we have technology to realize a lot of these things? Yes, we do. The idea with the index is to try to figure out how can we get data, usable data, understandable data to the necessary decision makers and the wider public, so you understand what is really the challenge of health. It's very, very hard to get access to data today if you don't work with it on a daily basis. And we can see that most health decision in the political system is based on feelings. It's not based on what's actually happening. So you could say this is a move from feel good to do good. And we also take this data and try to compare different data sources so we can identify best practices. So we also identify mutual self-interest, so we get different countries, parties, stakeholders to work together based on a common understanding of things. And lastly, but not least, it's also the idea to create a platform where you can have discussions going forward using evidence, using data to go forward with this. And the next step, which will be launched probably in the mid-2020, is to have an index on personalized health. So it's not so much about what the index will show, but what it can create, so we can move forward and it moves the discussion to what really matters, what works, what doesn't work, and how can we create things together. The future of sustainable healthcare is that we, from several approaches, go in and look at what is it that we really need to work with, and what we really need to work with is the disease burden. So if we can stop the increasing of the disease burden and maybe decrease the disease burden at the same time as we improve the quality of life, and we have a cost level of the health system that's acceptable. I'm not saying it should be lower or higher, I'm just saying acceptable to the situation, then I think that's good.